Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him well. Well, that's just a pattern interrupt from last week, right? Who we got? Johanna's in Sweden. We've got Tonya. We've got Frank out in Florida. We got Alex, Carmel here again, Karen T on the sofa. We've got Pam. We've got Liz Martin. We've got Liz Oliver. We've got Ann Borders. We've got Gert out in the Netherlands. We've got Ginny. Grant Foster out in Spain. I'm seeing myself coming back from Grant. Lior, good to see you. Nicola, we've got Ken James. Hi, Ken. We've got Amanda, we've got Jeff Fairfield, Caroline Day, we've got Pat O'Connor. I think we've still got some other people. Kareem coming into the waiting room. We had more people in the waiting room until they actually came into the waiting room and saw the skull. I think that they decided to leave, which is okay. That's all right. That obviously means they didn't understand last week's session, which is okay. Who else we got? We've got Andrea Armstrong. Hi, Andrea. Sally, you need to mute your microphone.
Oh.
Okay, so that's good. Let me just have a look. Oh no, we've got 47 people in the room, actually. So maybe I'm wrong about the other people who I said were in the waiting room, then logged out when they saw the skull. That was just an example of a pattern interrupt, which is what we were talking about last week. So this session this week is on reframing. So I'm going to do a little bit of a parental advisory warning, maybe a bit of a woke warning. You can't be woke but be effective at reframing. So if you just woke up, go back to sleep. Because there may be some certain things that if you had just woken up, you might think are inappropriate from a reframing point of view. And the most important thing, as we've said all along, is the result for the I'm going to say the client, but that doesn't presuppose it's going to be somebody who's paying you. This is somebody that you might be just having a conversation with that's not in a good place, and all those kind of things. This can be quite a fun session, which is what I intended to be. So this is what we're going to be covering this week: reframing. What is reframing? How do reframes work, and what do they do? Content reframing, both context and meaning reframes. And when I say a content reframe, to be able to do context and meaning reframes, you need content. Whereas, a lot of people say you can do NLP content free, 6-step reframe, content free, any of these things, Swish pattern, content free. Technically, yes. Reframing, no. We need the content. We need the content of the person's present state that's causing them a problem. And then there are two ways of doing content reframes, which are context and meaning reframes. And then we'll look and deep dive into both of those, when and how to do a context reframe and when and how to do a meaning reframe. Now, please understand that to really do this in detail and depth on my practitioner training, even though people have done pre-study, would probably take one or two segments, a segment for context reframing and a segment for meaning reframes. And we've got, in theory, 30 minutes, that's the context, for this evening. So let's get straight into how these things work. So you remember this from, I think it was session 1 on Everyday Magic, the NLP communications model, external event coming in, every individual filters it in their own individual way, creates an internal representation, and that creates their state. Their state determines their behavior, the results, and also it comes out in their physiology. I'm not going to go over that again. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how this works, but this thing here is important. State, behavior, results, and state physiology is important, because how do you know that one of your reframes has worked is you'll see it in the person's physiology. Now, going into a little bit more depth on this, the internal representation here, depending upon the meaning that that person puts on that internal representation, will determine the state it creates and therefore the behavior that they do as a result of this internal representation, and therefore the results that they get. And we already know this has got nothing to do with the external event. It has to do with their internal representation. In many cases, we can't change that. Actually, in most cases, we can't change the external event. So what we're doing with a reframe is we're reframing the meaning of that internal representation. So it creates a different state, therefore a different behavior and a different result. That's what reframing is all about. And, I've heard it said that the whole of NLP can be categorized as being anchoring and reframing, which, if you think about it, for those of you who know NLP already, is probably true. Anchoring and reframing. And what we're going to look at today is reframing, but not in a formal way of reframing, like submodalities is a reframe. What you're doing with submodalities is you're changing the context of the internal representation, changes the meaning of it. That was a food that I really liked. Now I hate it. That's a successful submodality intervention. That's a context reframe. Timeline therapy, mental emotional release, is a whole number of context reframes, all combined. It's a context in age, it's a context in time, and it's a context in learnings, which enables the person to go over the emotions. So, all of these things can be defined as either anchoring or reframing. So what I'll look at first is context reframes. So here, I've written that the wrong way around. I was doing these earlier. That should be swapped around. All meaning is context dependent, not all context is meaning dependent. That's a context reframing of itself. So, for instance, today has been quite a nice day here in Twickenham. I think it's about 8, 9, 10 degrees, which is good for this time of year. But if we change the context of this day to Twickenham in January, this would be a heat wave. Transport it to Twickenham in August, it would be a seriously cold day. It would be an abnormal day. Transform it or move today from Twickenham to the Caribbean, people would be complaining. Move this day, this weather, to Alaska, and it would be a heat wave, and we'd all be out in shorts and swimming in the sea. So all meaning is context dependent. So when we change the context, we change the meaning. Okay. So a couple of examples of this. This is where the work brigade might get a little bit upset. I watched a video, it was in 1990, I think it was, with a guy called Joel Barker, titled Paradigm Paranoia, something like that. And it had this video of this guy. It was set in like the early 1900s, 1920, something like this. And there's a guy driving along in his car, in his open-top sports car. He's got his Biggles helmet on. And if you see my video from last week, you'll know what this is. And he's got his Biggles helmet on. He's got his scarf flying out the corner here. And he's driving along, having a great time. And he comes up to a bend, and then another car comes around the bend, and it's on the wrong side of the road. And he's on a direct collision course with this particular car. And he thinks he's going to die. Fortunately, just before these two cars collide, the other car pulls over to the right side of the road, speeds past him. It's a woman driving the car, and she shouts out at the top of her voice to him, "Pig!" And he's thinking, what? It was you who was on the wrong side of the road. How dare you call me a pig? So he responds and reacts to that, looks over his shoulder and shouts out to her, "Bitch!" Goes around the corner at high speed, bam, straight into the pig. There was a pig in the middle of the road. All meaning is context dependent. Now, and you've really got to get your head around this to be able to do context reframes. So I have another little story to tell you. It's probably set in around about the same era of the impact of context. And I'm going to read it to you. It's probably in the 1920s, something like that kind of era. So a young man wanted to buy a pair of expensive gloves for his sweetheart's birthday. He went to an expensive boutique, bought the finest gloves available, and asked the salesman to have them delivered along with a note that he had written. Unfortunately, the clerk mixed up the order while wrapping the merchandise. Instead of sending the expensive gloves, the clerk accidentally wrapped a pair of panties and sent them to the young man's sweetheart, along with the following note which he had written. "Darling, I've been trying desperately to come up with a special gift for your birthday. I chose these because I noticed you are not in the habit of wearing any when we go out in the evening. I would have chosen the long ones with buttons, but since your sister wears the short ones, which are so easy to remove, I wanted to get the same style for you. You may be concerned that these are a delicate shade. However, the sales lady showed me a pair that she had been wearing for 3 weeks, and they were hardly soiled. She said that there are a couple of important care considerations that I should mention to you. First, when you take them off, remember to blow in them before putting them away, since they will naturally be a little damp from wearing. Second, be sure to keep them on while cleaning them so they won't shrink. The sales lady made such an impression upon me that I had to try them on for her. I had her try them on for me. She really looked great in them, and I can just imagine how great they're going to look on you. I decided to mail these so that you would have them in time for your birthday. I really hesitated because I wanted so much to be there to watch you put them on for the first time. There is little doubt in my mind that many other hands will have touched them before I see you again. I can hardly wait to run my hands over them or do as the French do and gently kiss them. I hope you really like them and will wear them for me on Friday night. P.S. The latest style is to wear them folded down with a little fur showing. All meaning is context dependent. So how do we do a context reframe? We do these with when the client gives us something which is a comparative deletion. I'm to, it's to, they're to, he's to, she's to, whatever it may be. And, a great example of a context reframe in this way, because what you do is you go, okay, what they're saying, he's to, I'm to, she's to, whatever, is the content. We're playing with the content. We're reframing the content. This is why we need the content to be able to do reframing effectively. Then we go, okay, this is a question that we ask ourselves. In what context would this be a positive? So their complaint, in what context would it be positive? So an example being, somebody, I think it was Ericsson, came to Ericsson and said, my daughter is so stubborn, she won't do what she's told. To which pace, lead, that's amazing. That's a pattern interrupt. Complaint, listen to the complaint. That's amazing. Pattern interrupt because the person's not expecting that. That's amazing. Won't you be so happy and comfortable when your daughter first starts to date and a man wants to take advantage of her and she knows exactly what to say to it? So there you've got a shift in context of age and also a context of outside of the family to dating. Yeah. And a nice pace at the beginning with a pattern interrupt, which we talked about last week. So that's where we do a context reframe. When you get something in a comparative deletion, we only can do reframing when we've got things as either a comparative deletion, I'm to, he's to, it's to, whatever it may be. And then we reframe that and go, okay, where would that, what they're seeing as being extreme behavior, what context would that behavior be a positive? We're talking about everyday magic here, but we can put that in the context of sales and go, well, the house is too small. Yes, it is small. Or if we want to use our internal organizations, yes, it's not as big as you wanted. And that's why you can have a house of this size in this neighborhood with the possibility of putting in a loft extension in the future. Nice reframe. Then we've got meaning reframes. This is when we've got a complex equivalence. When somebody says X means Y, he does that, this means I do this. Yeah. So here, we're not shifting the context. We're saying in the same context, this is a differentiation, same context, but we're shifting the meaning of the context. So we're asking ourselves, what else could this mean in this context? What possibly has the person missed in this context? We could change the meaning completely. And a great example again from Ericsson a lady came to him, not because it was her problem, it was her daughter's problem. Her daughter believed that her feet were too big and it was causing her a major problem. So Erickson said, okay, arrange this situation. I'm going to come and do, so say to your daughter, I'm going to come and do a medical examination with you on such and such a day, and you want your daughter to be there to be in attendance. I'll handle the rest. And the lady arranged this. So Erickson arrives, obviously the medical doctor, and is going to do a medical examination of the mother with the daughter in attendance. So he says to the daughter, please, could you get me a basin of hot water and some towels? Then come back and stand behind me whilst do an examination of your mother. Which the daughter dutifully does, gets a bowl of hot water, basin of hot water, gets towels, stands behind Milton Erickson. Mother's in front of Milton Erickson. At which point the daughter's here behind Milton Erickson, and he steps back deliberately with the daughter holding the bowl of a basin of hot water and towels, and stamps on her foot. The water goes flying everywhere. Pattern interrupt. Towels go flying everywhere. Daughter's in shock, otherwise known as trance. And Milton Erickson says, if you young girls just had smaller feet, it would mean that old men like me would be able to see them more clearly and not step on them. Job done. All in one reframe. So it's not a precise science. You might not necessarily get the result every single time, but what you're doing is when you do a reframe, you are shifting the person's model of the world. And you'll know when you've done that successfully because you'll see it in their physiology. Yeah. You might get it in one go. You might have to do a number of goes. So I'm going to then close what I'm teaching you here with an example, an experience that I had, which was with a client. And this was in my early days of doing one-to-one therapy. This wouldn't happen today and I learned from this experience, but I'm going to share it with you. I had this lady phone me, and she'd said that she got a phobia, and could I help her get rid of the phobia? And I had quite a lot of experience getting rid of phobias. Normally get rid of them in 90 minutes. So I booked her in. Big mistake that I made. I didn't ask what the phobia was of. But anyway, she's booked in and she shows up. And I said, hey, great, build rapport, usual thing. Okay, so you got a phobia? Yes. What is your phobia of? I can't tell you. Well, I need to know what your phobia is so I can help you get rid of it. I can't tell you what your phobia is. So early days of NLP, resistance in a client is a sign of a lack of rapport. So I'm building more rapport, more rapport, more rapport, more rapport, more rapport. What's your phobia of? Still wouldn't tell me. So after about 20 minutes, she finally told me what her phobia was, which was, she said she had a phobia of her period. Now, being a man, I'm justifiably able to ask the question, how is that a problem? And she said, well, for the week that I have my period, I can't go out of the house. But for the week before, in case my period starts early, I can't go out of the house. And then for the week after my period, in case it comes back, I can't go out of the house. So I can't go out of the house for 3 weeks. Now, even as a man who's never had a period, I can say, okay, if I couldn't get out of the house for 3 weeks out of every 4, would that be a problem? Yes. Great. So we've identified the problem. Is it totally okay with your unconscious mind to let go of this problem? No. Right, well, that's easy. All we do is chunk up on the highest intention, do a reframe on the highest intention. And I'm chunking up, get the highest intention. Is it in conflict with letting the phobia go? Yeah, great. Wouldn't it be, that's your unconscious mind, wouldn't you be able to have a lot more X if you were to let go of Y? Yes. Right, so is it okay for you to let go of your phobia? No. And I'm pretty good at reframing. And I'm getting nowhere. And, I always want to get a result with the client, but I'm going, I've got nowhere at all. If I haven't got a yes from our unconscious mind, nothing I do is going to work. So I'm stuck. But I had just read this book here, Provocative Therapy by Frank Farrelly. And if you're serious about reframing, read this book. It's outrageous. So I'm stuck and I'm wondering what on earth to do with this lady, because I really want to get the result for her. And my unconscious mind's going, do this. I'm going, do this. I'm thinking, there's no way I can do it. Do this. And I'm thinking, no, there's no. Do this. But then consciously I'm going, well, nothing I've done so far has worked. So I'm going to trust my unconscious mind with this reframe. So I said to her, so you've got a phobia of your period? She goes, yes. I said, does the word tampon mean anything to you? She said, oh, you can't use those. They're dangerous. And I went, you're right. They are. She said, why? What have you heard? I said, not heard. I experienced. She goes, what? What do you mean experienced? Well, when I was a kid, I found one. Maybe it was one of my mum's or my sister's, and it was in this wrapper, and I thought it was a sweet. And so I unwrapped it and put it in my mouth. And it blew up in my mouth. I thought I was going to choke to death, but at least you've got this piece of string on it to pull it out to save your own life. And the string came off, and I thought I was going to die. So in the end, I managed to get this thing out of my mouth. Now, this lady at this point in time is starting to look at me as far as like, okay, I thought I'd got a problem when I came in, but this guy's got an even bigger problem. She said, anyway, besides that, they're too expensive. So I said, well, buy some cotton wool and roll your own. She said, but that's not going to work, because if I didn't have a problem with my period, there would be a war. Cause and effect, right? Now, outside of NLP, you go, what the fuck is that all about? Inside of NLP, you go, curiosity. How does somebody get that model of the world that if they didn't have a problem with their period, there would be a war? And she wasn't winding me up. She was totally congruent about this. So this will give you a time frame on it, because it was probably late 90s, I think it was. So I went, so it's your fault then? She goes, what? I said, Bosnia. Bosnia is your problem. The conflict in Bosnia and Serbia is your problem. You created that. And she went, no, I didn't. I couldn't have created it because I've still got my problem. This is how congruent her model of the world was. To which I said to her, so what's so fucking special about your period? At which point she went into complete transderivational search. And for those in NLP know what I'm talking about. For those of you new to this, what a person does is their eyes move around everywhere, which is what we call an NLP eye access pattern, to find an answer to the question. And then her eyes stopped. And she said, it's gone. I said, great. So now can we work on your phobia? She goes, no. My phobia is gone. It's disappeared. And we tested it. And in actual fact, the phobia had disappeared just from those, if you like, context and meaning reframes in a series of, in a conversational intervention. I tested it to make sure it had gone, and it had, because otherwise I wouldn't have let her go. And she left. And then a couple of weeks later at the office, we got a postcard posted through the door, and it was said, "Dear Dr. Shepherd, if you remember me, you worked with me around my phobia. I'm currently on holiday with my husband. We have been to XYZ places. We've been to the theatre, we've been to the beach, we've been to here, we've been to wherever it was. Wish you weather here, wish you a wonderful. Best wishes," whatever her name was. And then at the bottom it said, "P.S. By the way, it's my period. I'm having my period." And I thought, what does the postman think about the things that get sent through my letterbox? That's the power of reframing. If you get it right, and it's an art and a science. That's the thing you've got to get. It's an art and a science. When you get the art and the science right, in the right way, so that thing we were saying, when you say the right thing to the right person, at the right time, in the right way, boom, magic happens. So I just wanted to leave you with that personal experience I had of that, and the power of reframing. And you also notice the importance again pace the person where they are now. Then the reframe is here. The reframe makes the break between the pace and the lead. We can also do a break state, obviously, and then we lead from the reframe into future. Okay, that's the content for this evening. Any questions from you guys about what we've talked about?
Hey, Tonya has a question, Dave.
Let me just switch on the amp's gone off, so let me just re-put that on because I could hardly hear you there. Let me just make sure it's reconnected. Yeah, did you say Tonya?
Hi.
Hi, is that Tonya?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Tonya.
Hi. Going back to the first example with the stubborn daughter, I understand that that's amazing as the pattern interrupt. Can you help me understand how it's pacing that?
Well, what he's done so this is so you've got the situation, you've got a nice pace and lead, pace with daughter being there, helping out.
The other example, my daughter's so stubborn she won't do what she's told, not the feet daughter, the other daughter one.
Sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
So the pace there is, well, what you do, I probably truncated it a little bit too much. So what you do is you go, so, you know, so your daughter's stubborn. Yeah. So what exactly do you mean by that? Well, you know, she won't do what I tell her. Okay. You're a man, right? Yeah. And she won't do what you're telling her. Dad. Yeah. Okay. So how good will you feel in the future? Because the daughter was little. How good will you feel in the future when she starts dating and men want her to do things that she doesn't want to do, and she's quite capable of standing up to them and telling them no? Would be the entire thing.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Sally, any other questions?
Not at the moment. I'm just putting a post in. Okay, Liz Oliver has a question, Dave.
Okay, Liz, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, if someone doesn't accept the reframe, you know, they don't agree with it, or it doesn't have the effect. I mean, would you keep on, you know, trying another reframe and another reframe, or at some point you just go, well, that's not the right thing for this person, and do something else?
Yeah, it's a good question, Liz. Actually, I think, you know, as we talked about before, there's an importance of having permission. I don't think you need to have permission specifically for NLP reframing. You know, who knows? Because, you know, what really is that? That the person wants to change the problem. Because if they don't want to change the problem, then nothing we can do will help it, other than reframing the fact they don't want to change the problem. Then with reframes, obviously, I've given you examples of reframes of, you know, isolated examples. Whereas, you know, in reality, what you'd want to do is you would want to do a reframe that was within the person's model of the world. Although you might want to go outside of the model of the world to do a pattern interrupt, as an example. And then, because it's not, reframing is not a precise science, you might do a perfect reframe, but it didn't work. It didn't do anything. That doesn't mean that you got it wrong. You did a perfectly good reframe. It just didn't work for the way the particular presenting problem is wired in the person's neurology and their internal representation. So in that case, yes, what you would do is you would reload. And by reload, potentially if you delivered a reframe which caused a break in rapport, then you would get rapport back. And, you know, you've probably seen it. I do this a lot in that video I put up in the group this week with the lady with the pigeon phobia. What I do every time I do a reframe, and by the way, if you think about it from an NLP point of view, every time I have a change the submodalities of the trigger of the phobia, that is a context reframe. Then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, so what was the problem again? I like doing Columbo. It's probably my age. I find it very, very easy. If you've never seen Columbo, I'm sure it's available somewhere on Netflix, Amazon, or whatever. Columbo always had this style of being the bumbling idiot, which I find quite easy. And he'd ask a question and he'd go, "Okay, help me out here. I'm a little bit slow. What was the problem again?" And you have the person actually state the problem again, which of course reassociates them into the problem. If the linguistics that they give you around the problem has changed in any way, your reframes are working. It's on the move. What was the problem again? Great. They give you the problem, and then you do another reframe. It's Liz, that with reframing, it's not, I'm giving you examples of where people got it in one. They're great examples. That's not, it's that kind of thing. In theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there's a massive difference between theory and practice. But once you've got the theory, then you're able to put it into practice. And yes, what you would do, exactly as you say, Liz, is that what you would do is you would then have them restate the problem, and then you would reframe it in a different way. Does that answer your question, Liz?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, Phil, you've got a comment.
Yeah, I've got a comment. I didn't get the whole presentation, David. I was a little held up. But anyway, I recall many years ago, this is just a general question, you're talking about the 6-stage reframe?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Does that ring any bells? Because I remember people talking about, was it a credible process to go through? And
Yeah.
since Sally asked for some general questions, I just thought I'd replay that in my mind.
Yeah, no, fantastic, Phil, that you were late because you were so busy, so business is going so well. By the way, that's a reframe, whether it's true or not. 6-step reframe. I think it's important to understand the concept of the 6-step reframe. And there are some potential downsides to it, which is why I teach the concept, but we don't actually do an exercise on it, is that with the 6-step reframe, and I don't have time to go through the entire thing, but you've got a particular problem, and then you have the person go inside and find their creative part to come up with creative ideas of new ways of solving the problem, which, if the person didn't have a creative part at that point in time, they do now. And from our school lineage of NLP, we're more about integration rather than disintegration, in that congruency is more around being whole rather than fragmented. And we did have somebody come and do our master practitioner who had done a practitioner training with a different company for their practitioner that did teach 6-step reframing. And he had a problem. He got 6 creative parts that were coming up with different ideas and were arguing. So he could never make a decision. Guess how many exercises on the 6-step reframe they did on his practitioner training? 6. So what we did was we enabled him to integrate those parts, so it was just whole once again, and his problem disappeared.
Okay.
So it's an important concept to understand, because it's basically the NLP negotiation model, which you can use in business very effectively. And with an individual, it has a potential downside of installing parts that aren't already there. And what I'm about is about people becoming more healed, whole, and magnificent, and whole being the most important one there. So whenever a part comes up, I want to integrate that and enable a person to become more whole.
That could explain why I'm trying to do 6 things at once. Different things.
It could well do. But, you know, if I've told you, Phil, to do just one thing, I've told you 6 times. Focus.
The one thing.
Yeah, but I've told you that 6 times, haven't I?
Oh, many times.
At least by now.
Read The One Thing. That's the best book I've read in years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and every single part of you will become one.
Tonight.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Good question, Phil. Sally, any other questions?
Yeah, Gert has a question for you.
Good.
Hi. Yes, my question is actually when somebody perceives their world in such a way that they think or perceive things as real truth and stick to a particular issue. How can we deal with it? For instance, I have a weight loss client and she's a night eater, and actually the issues around that, I can deal with that. But actually what I found out is that she has a sleeping disorder. And when she came to her transition state, the medical doctor said she doesn't make melatonin anymore. So she got all kinds of heavy sleeping pills and she relies on that. But it only helps for a couple of hours and then she's awake for the whole night. And then
Right.
and actually I feel that is something else than just that hormone system which is out of balance. So
Yeah.
how can I deal with such kind of thing? Because she sees it as the fixed and she has to live with it. But she would love to sleep again.
Okay. So if we're going to look at it from a reframing perspective,
Yeah.
see what we're talking about, then this would be a meaning reframe. I've got low melatonin means I can't sleep at night. As an example, I don't know if that's actually the way she structured it. I'm just giving you that as an example.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there's another example of meaning reframe, as in, which is called a reverse frame. Do you think there's anybody that's got really high melatonin who doesn't sleep at night? Answer that question, yes, there are. Do you think there are anybody with really low melatonin who sleep really well at night? Answer is yes, because these aren't true. You always find counter examples of that. Now, there's another thing that you can do here, is if she goes, I've got low melatonin, which means I can't sleep at night, is use that complex equivalence rather than reframing it, use it and show her how to increase her melatonin. Because then that paces and uses her own belief.
Yeah.
So how can you teach her to increase her own melatonin? Well, you know, James and I in Fix Mind work a lot with insomnia. We find a lot of cases of insomnia have got absolutely nothing to do with anxiety. They've got to do with sleep hygiene. And for your body to create melatonin, you need a good number of hours. When I say a good number of hours, 7 or 8 hours per day in total darkness. A lot of people go, I'm wearing eye shades, so I'm in total darkness. No, your skin's aware of the light. So you've got to be in a totally dark room. No TV in the bedroom. No phones in the bedroom. No iPads in the bedroom. Your bed in your bedroom is for the 2 S's: sleep and sex. Nothing else. And a lot of people now, the bedrooms become the living room, you know, and that's what confuses their, I mean, neurologically, their brain is confused. So, you know, teach them out, okay, we can reframe it, like I just said, but equally, if she's not willing to reframe it, use it. I had this in the 90s. I had this belief that I couldn't get in shape unless I had a Nordic track ski machine, which is one of these, you know, the Nordic track with the arms and the Nordic skiing thing, great for you know, aerobic exercise. And I went, I can't get in touch, get in shape unless I have one of these things. And I thought that's a limiting belief, which I knew how to get rid of. But then I just went like, why don't you just buy a fucking Nordic track ski machine and use your limiting belief as an empowering belief, which is a reframing of itself, if you think about it. And so I bought one and it worked, but then it would, wouldn't it? In fact, I never used it, but it still worked. Because my belief was if I had one of these, then I'd be able to lose weight. Didn't have anything in the belief about actually getting on the thing and using it, which is the power of internal representations. So answer your question, good.
Yeah, and I was wondering about last week you discussed about pattern interrupts.
Yeah.
Because it's what I noticed is also kind of pattern which somebody is repetitive doing. And for me, that makes also sense to find out if there's a way of dealing with such kind of ideas about the world.
Yes. Let me see if I can find the book. Yes, I can. Oops, wrong camera.
Yeah.
Ordeal Therapy by Jay Haley. Erickson would create ordeals before he would see somebody. And the reason why that's your question has triggered me into thinking about that is what he would do is with somebody with insomnia, as an example. Then if they were asleep, if they were trying to get sleep and they couldn't get sleep in more than a certain period of time, 15, 30 minutes, whatever it may be, he would say, you've got to get up and for 2 hours, you've got to clean the kitchen floor with a toothbrush. One thing that Erickson was really good at was getting people to agree to ordeals. And that's kind of like not really explained in any of the books. I guess it's because of his position as being a medical doctor, psychiatrist, whatever. And so, people would follow through on the ordeal. And so they couldn't get to sleep for more than half an hour. So they would get up and do what they were told and start cleaning the kitchen floor with a toothbrush for 2 hours. And after a couple of days, their unconscious mind went, I'd rather go to sleep. So the overall concept, if you like, we could put it as being a reframe, is make the problem more painful than the solution. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's the ordeal therapy is a great book if you're really into that kind of stuff.
Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you. Any other questions, Sally?
I think that's it. Oh,
Okay.
hang on. Someone says, did you mean make the solution more painful than the problem?
No, make the problem more painful than the solution.
Yeah, okay. All right, no more questions.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I think next week is Sleight of Mind, which is an extension of what we've done this week, where we'll be going into what's called in NLP sleight of mouth patterns, of which context and meaning reframes are just two of the examples of sleight of mouth patterns. But they give you really elegant ways of conversationally enabling somebody to change their beliefs. So I've called them sleight of man rather than sleight of mouth, because that's what they really are, sleight of mind rather than sleight of mouth. So that's what we're going to do next week. Same time, same back channel. I will get on to editing this very, very soon. So any of you that haven't been able to watch it live will be able to see that. Those of you that join me live, ask questions, thank you very much. You really add to the energy of all these things. We've got a good number of people that literally, just because of circumstances, can't watch the thing live. So you joining me live and you asking me questions and interacting really makes it a valuable learning experience for them. So thank you so much for joining me on the live. Useful stuff tonight. Great stuff. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week, same time, same back channel.
Thanks, both.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.